Hello, I'm psychologist and author Dr. Paul Coleman and the founder of FindingPeaceInYourHeart.com. I'm so delighted that you could join me today. One of the most exciting things that I love to hear from people that I'm working with, whether it's one-on-one in my office as a psychotherapist or people consulting with me over the telephone from anywhere across the world, or even if I'm giving a talk, is when people come up to me and they say, "I never thought of it that way before." And I know that what has happened is that some insight or some idea has now come to them and it's a game changer. And I know their life will never quite be the same again if they use those concepts. Well, I want to talk to you today about what I consider 3 game changers. I have many, many more to come, but today we'll talk about 3. And these are game changers for other people. They may or may not be game changers for you. Maybe you already know some of these insights. But the great thing about game changers is they will happen to you if you can embrace them. I was receiving a phone call from a lady who lived close to London, England. And she wanted to consult with me and asked if that was okay. Absolutely. And this was her concern. She said, "I have a 4-year-old son and I am very, very overprotective of him. I know I shouldn't be, but I can't seem to stop myself." She would sleep in his bedroom on a cot and wake up every hour to check on him even though he was fine. And she would be reluctant to take him to places, playgrounds, where he might get hurt. She would, but very reluctantly. And her husband was not very happy with her and her overprotectiveness, but she didn't know how to stop herself. And she told me the reason why. She'd had a very, very difficult time getting pregnant. And at one point she did become pregnant with twins. And around the 7th or 8th month of pregnancy, something went wrong and the twins died. And she was so heartbroken. But now, a couple years later, she was pregnant with her son. He was born happy and healthy, and she didn't want to have anything go wrong. So she was overprotective. So I was listening to her, and she took a lot of great pride in her thinking and problem-solving skills. And I was talking to her about ways to manage anxiety. And she talked about, "Oh, I've tried meditating, I've tried relaxing, it doesn't work for me." And I explained to her that part of quieting your mind isn't just to feel a little relaxed in the moment. It's to open up to ideas and insights that you're not going to consider if you're so busy trying to think about all the problems you have and how to protect yourself from future calamity. She said, "I still don't buy it." So I told her this story. And this became a game changer for her, and maybe for you. I was 20 years old, and I took a course on how to become a lifeguard, and I got my certificate on being a lifeguard. One of the exercises blew me away. It was sort of my own little game changer. We had to go into the deep end of the swimming pool, remain perfectly still, our arms and legs tight by our side, not move a muscle, remain vertical, and stay afloat. Well, we tried it and we would sink. And the instructor said, "Well, you're doing it all wrong." He said, "All you have to do is breathe." Wait, what? I said, "Watch." And what happened was, as you inhaled, your lungs filled with air, and you would rise above the waterline. And when you exhaled, you would start to sink. And then you would inhale again before the water reached your mouth or nose. And you could do that for hours without moving a muscle, and you would be fine. And the instructor pointed out that there are people who would drown in a lake because they're flailing about, saying, "I can't swim." All they had to do was breathe. He said, "You don't have to do a lot. You just sometimes have to be." Bingo. Game changer for me. Doing versus being. And I told this woman over the phone that story, and she went, "Whoa. That makes sense to me." And she started to practice just relaxing, allowing her mind to notice how she felt, notice the thoughts without attaching themselves to her. And one day she had this passing thought that blew her away, and it became a game changer. She was all of a sudden thinking about her twins that passed away and imagining them frolicking and playing in heaven. And she said, "But my son doesn't play. I don't really let him play. I want him to play like they are." And that image helped her to allow her son to play. And then she imagined that the twins were actually joining him in spirit. But she said that never would have happened if she hadn't practiced just being instead of always doing. So one game changer is to keep that balance, because sometimes you don't know what to do that's right. You think you do. The only way you might know for sure is when you allow yourself to just be and allow guidance and insights to enter. A second game changer that I want to talk about, many people think that if they just have their action plans and their goals and they persevere, they will get to where they want to go. And that is often the true case. But how many times have we been thrown off course, or things happen that we weren't expecting? In fact, I would bet that if you go back every 5 or 10 years of your life, there will be something that happened that you didn't anticipate that changed your life. A new friend that you never met before shows up and now they're your best friend. Or you get a job offer that you weren't expecting. Or you meet somebody. Or you have a health crisis. Something that changes your life. I call these sacred surprises. And I want you to be open to those possibilities, rather than just always focused intently on your specific steps that you're taking, because sometimes these sacred surprises are meant to help you, but only if you are intrigued about them. People who know me well know that one of my hobbies and passions, believe it or not, is stage acting. I've been in several dozen stage performances in community theater over the last many, many years, and I thoroughly enjoy it. About 10 years or so ago, one of my friends said, "Paul, you should write a play." Now, I've never thought about writing a play. Writing a play is very difficult to do. The difference between acting in a play and writing a play is sort of like the difference between knowing how to drive a car versus knowing how to build a car. Very different. But I was intrigued. I had many other things to do. I had books to write. I had clients to see. I had a family to be with and take care of. But I was intrigued, and I had this idea for a play, and it took me many years, and I stopped and I started, and I read books on playwriting. Long story short, in 2011, believe it or not, this play was independently produced in New York City, off Broadway, a little small theater. A great joy of my life. It never made the big time, it never got published, but it was a great joy to see that happen. And even more importantly, some of the people who were in the play are now my closest friends, people I never would have met if my other friend backstage 10 years ago hadn't said, "Paul, maybe you should write a play." That's a sacred surprise. And I want you to be open to these things and be willing to venture toward them if you have any excitement or passion. Even if you think it's off of a goal, it may be connected later. A third area, I remember I was invited to give a talk at the annual Afterlife Awareness Conference. It was held in St. Louis a few years ago. And after there was a Q&A, and one of the things that people often ask me having to do with the afterlife is, what signs should I look for that a loved one is there? I'm not sure what to look for. Is this a sign? Is that a sign? And I said to them, well, you can create your own sign. And they, what? Really? Absolutely you can. I said, think of something, a word, a phrase, an image, a picture, that's a little unusual. You're not going to see it all the time, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. And then if that starts to show up, well, that can be your sign. And for some people, that's a game changer. I had a client, a young woman, whose beloved grandmother had passed away. And she was really despondent over the woman's passing. And she was looking for signs. And I told her, you can create a sign. Well, this was the month of December in the Northeast, so it was chilly. And she said, well, I've come up with a sign, a grasshopper. And if I see a grasshopper on television or I see the word in a book, that'll be my sign. She certainly didn't expect to see any grasshoppers in December. In fact, she hadn't seen any all year. Well, she called me 2 days later, and this is what happened. The next day after I'd seen her, the temperature was a little warmer, so she went outside with her coat to read through a magazine, sit on the patio. She looked down, and on a table in front of her, staring up at her, was a grasshopper. She was amazed. She runs over next door to get her friend. They look at the grasshopper. The friend picks up the grasshopper because my client was a little skittish with insects, puts the grasshopper down, lets it go away. The very next day, she's out there again. This time there's a second grasshopper. She said it was about twice the size. Same spot, right in the middle of the table, looking directly at her. She was blown away. She gets her friend. Friend comes in, they talk about, isn't this amazing? Picks up the grasshopper, the friend puts it away in the grass over in the corner. And she said, you know, this is just so thrilling to me. I can't believe I got my sign so quickly. And the friend said, yeah, and what's more interesting is that each of those grasshoppers, oddly enough, was missing a leg. And she said, my grandmother was an amputee. She was missing a leg. So that's a great example of how you can create your own sign, and you actually may begin to feel like the loved ones you miss are actually present in your life. Are any of these game changers for you? Practice being instead of doing. Be aware of sacred surprises that are working for you if you can be intrigued by them. If you have loved ones that you want to hear from who've passed on, create your own sign. You do any of these things and your world starts to change. You've made your life change. These are game changers that I want you to be excited about and realize that they can happen over and over and over again. And what I'd like for you to do is contact me with your own stories about game changers. You can go to my website, findingpeaceinyourheart.com. You can email me through there. I have a Facebook page, Dr. Paul Coleman. You can email me and write to me, post me there. I want to hear your inspirational stories because I'm quite sure some of them are going to really inspire me, and they might even be game-changing moments for me. I'm Dr. Paul Coleman. Thank you so much for watching. You can find me on findingpeaceinyourheart.com.